Hey, so we're continuing with our um, Bible explication, Bible interpretation. And today we're talking about Proverbs Chapter 3. I'm excited about it. This is a good one. Uh, the book of Proverbs has a lot of symbolism in it, a lot of mystical meaning. So uh, this chapter is no exception. In fact, it's probably one of the best ones. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on. Let's just get right into it. We'll start by reading the chapter. Really, we're only going through the first half, so we'll read through the first half of the chapter, and then I'll go through line by line and talk about the symbolism and how it relates to Neville Goddard's teachings, just Christian mysticism in general. Um, just as a reminder, a lot of what I'm going to share in terms of interpretation, it's not my own interpretation. It's heavily borrowed from not only Neville Goddard's interpretations of the Bible, but also people like Emmett Fox, Joel Goldsmith, and Murphy, So a lot of these guys did this way, way before me. That being said, I do sometimes pray for guidance when I'm reading the scriptures. And so a little bit of it is my own interpretation too. Anyway, let's go. Let's get in it. So, chapter 3, Proverbs. My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel, and marrow to thy bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance, and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. So that's the first half of it. The second half of this chapter goes into kind of like the fear of God, having the fear of God and accepting his correction. So there's a real transition that happens the second half of the chapter. So we're going to stop here for the purposes of this video. So let's go through it line by line. First verse, my son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. So law, this is law in the meaning of Torah, in the meaning of the Bible, So what is law exactly? A lot of people think, well, it's the law of Moses, the Ten Commandments. It actually goes a lot deeper than that, in my opinion. One of the ways that I like to think about the law is the law of cause and effect, or the law of mental equivalency, as Emmett Fox calls it. So this is the idea that as within, so without. If you're entertaining an idea, a feeling, that is going to eventually externalize itself in your world. And this is kind of supported, this interpretation of the word law is supported by the following line, which is, let thine heart keep my commandments. So the fact that it's referencing the heart and not the hands or something more external shows that we're really talking about inner experience here. And so to keep the heart in alignment with your desire, which is to say the feeling of fulfillment, the feeling of gratitude, all of those good things. So that's what it means to keep the law. It means to maintain that energy, really, the energy of fulfillment. Verse 2, for length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. So not only will it give you all of the good things, the sort of manifestation, fun goodies, you might call them, but it also gives you health and peace. This is in contrast to something like hard work, the sweat of the brow, sort of toiling type of work, which maybe, can produce some results, maybe. But even if it does, it kind of is always a trade-off. It's at the expense of your health. It's at the expense of your peace. The type of creation that we're talking about right now, the type of manifestation, not only will it give you your wishes, but it'll do it in a much, much more preferable way. Verse 3, let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck, and write them upon the table of thine heart. This is a really packed verse here, so let's take our time with it. The idea of mercy and truth. So these are kind of two opposites in a way. They fit together, or they work together really well. The idea of mercy, as far as I see it, is it's aligned with forgiveness. It's aligned with this idea of turning away from the things that you don't want. A lot of times we dwell on our fears, we dwell on negative circumstances. That is the opposite of mercy. Mercy is about forgiving things, letting them go, and then focusing on the truth. So the truth is that God is good, that the world is good, that the world is abundant, it's infinite. God wants to give us blessings. It's his good pleasure to give us the kingdom. He's made us perfect, and he loves us deeply. And as long as we turn away from the illusions, the fear, the doubt, and that turning away is called mercy, and as long as we embrace the truth, then we're doing the following, which is we're binding the truth about our neck, and we're writing it upon our heart. So neck and heart are both symbolic of different things here. So when you bind something around the neck, it's like a necklace, obviously, but I think neck is probably symbolizing the voice here. Usually when we think of neck, we think of two things. One is the voice. So if we're talking about the voice, the throat, that's where words come out, we have to be really careful to guard our words and guard our speech, because that's going to have a lasting effect on our circumstances. So when it says bind it about your neck, it's kind of hinting at this idea of, hey, use your words wisely. Make sure you're speaking from a place of alignment with your desire. And then the other thing that neck is kind of associated with is holding up the head. So if the head is kind of like our thoughts, it's the things that we're thinking about, we're entertaining, it's the ideas we're having, well, that is being supported by the neck. The neck is kind of the muscle, the foundation, if you will, of our thoughts. And so if you bind these truths around your neck, then the neck is what supports the head and all the thoughts. So all of your thoughts are kind of more likely to be good, righteous thoughts if you've already bound these truths within your neck. Maybe that's a stretch, I don't know, but I wanted to throw that in there because neck could be symbolizing something there, something like that. And then the second part of this is write them just being mercy and truth again, write them upon the table of thine heart. So this isn't a table like a dinner table. It's more like a tablet. Specifically, it's a type of thing that you carve into. So here the heart, it needs to be kind of like impressed, engraved with these truths. And again, the way that that's done, it's not through just like vain repetition or all of that stuff. It's by feeling. It's by feeling that things get engraved in the heart, obviously. And so that's what this is really emphasizing. Verse 4, so shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. So this is another interesting one too, because we have, if you do these things, if you embrace mercy and truth, then you find favor, which I take that to mean blessings, right? You get what you desire, you get fulfillment in the material world, and you also get good understanding. So again, I feel like this is in contrast to that type of physical labor that the material man wants to engage in. The material man, he might be able to produce a certain amount of good circumstances or favor through hard work, but he won't get the good understanding as a result. Certainly not in the sight of God. Another interesting thing here is that it's not only saying that if you do these things, if you embrace mercy and truth, you'll get understanding and favor in the sight of God, but it does add that you'll get it in the sight of man too. So even though you're not really abiding by what seems like the laws of the world, you're kind of playing your own game, your own internal game. Inevitably, mankind will have to recognize that you have some type of wisdom, some type of understanding, if only because of the incredible results that you're getting. Again, it's the type of wisdom that comes without effort. It's a wisdom that happens as a byproduct of embracing mercy and truth. It's not the type of apparent wisdom or illusory wisdom that comes from gaining knowledge, memorizing a bunch of trivia, right? There's no mention of that. We're talking about a more important type of understanding here, and that is the understanding that comes as a byproduct of simply turning away from bad things and turning towards things that are good and lovely. In other words, things that are true. Verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. So here's the word understanding again, and we're getting even more clarification on the type of understanding we're talking about. In fact, it's saying, don't lean into that worldly knowledge. Don't allow that to be the basis for your decision making. In some ways, do the opposite. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. So it really is putting those two things in contrast to one another. What does it mean to trust in the Lord with all your heart? Well, trust in awareness, trust in your imagination, trust in that inner sense of being that we all have, and trust in God, trust in your Creator who loves you. Verse 6, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Seems pretty straightforward. Everything you think, everything you feel, it should be from a state of being that's in communion with God. So again, it's not so much what you do, it's not the what, right? So it's not like, oh, do you move this piece of furniture over here, or do you take this particular pill or something like that. It's the state that you do it from, and by doing it from the right state of being or the right energy, then you're acknowledging him, and then he will direct all thy paths and just give you the easiest path towards fulfillment. Also worth noting here that, well, actually, let's move on to the next one. So verse 7, be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. So this again is leaning into this idea of there's a contrast between the knowledge of the world and the real truth, the real wisdom that comes from your inner knowing and your imagination in God. This is emphasized further by the fact that the word in the Torah that's used, or in the Bible that's used for eyes here, is ayin, which is the physical eye specifically. So don't trust in the physical eye, but fear the Lord, which is to say, keep your eyes on what's inside. So what are you imagining? What sort of feelings and ideas are you entertaining? If you stay vigilant there in the internal space, that's fearing the Lord. And inevitably, if you're paying attention to what you're thinking about, you're not going to consciously think about evil things or things that are unpleasant. So you'll be departing from evil. So another thing that's kind of reassuring about this too, this constant emphasis that you shouldn't be wise in thine own eyes, that you shouldn't lean on your own understanding, is it really gives a sense of relief that, okay, all of these facts in the world, all of the books there are to read, I don't have to do that in order to get what I want. The thing that's standing in between me and the fulfillment of all my desires is not knowledge. It's not that I lack knowledge. It's just that I'm not living from the fulfillment internally. And So there is something kind of liberating in that, I would say. Verse 8, and if you do that, it shall be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones. This is a beautiful verse for sure. And I love that it says health to thy navel, because the navel is where the umbilical cord obviously was connected when we were in the womb. And in some ways, we still are in a type of womb. I like to think, this life is kind of like a little bubble that we're gestating within. So when it's saying that following all of these prescriptions for fulfillment and happiness and peace and love, that it'll be health to thy navel, it's really kind of showing that the substance, the nourishment, the most fundamental nourishment that all of us need is not food, it's not water, it's not air. It really is something spiritual, and that's what these verses are pointing to. And so if you abide by these spiritual laws, then all the other types of health, including the physical health, do follow as a result. And this is why it's mentioning the navel, because the navel is that primary place where we receive nourishment. So that's kind of interesting. And if you had any doubt that this type of spiritual nourishment could also nourish your physical body, well, then read the next line, because it says, and it will be marrow to thy bones. So if the navel represents the kind of passageway that we receive nourishment from the spiritual world, then the bones, they represent our physical bodies. There's no part of our physical body that is more dense, that's more weighty than our bones. So if you wanted to use some type of symbolism to express the idea of the physical body, it would be the bones. And so what this verse is saying is, look, even when it comes to physical health, all you have to do is get right with God, get right inside, and focus on what's lovely. And not only will you get all of the things that you're wishing for, but it will also have these sort of awesome side effects of physical health. Verse 9, honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So what is it? What is our substance? Honor the Lord with thy substance. So again, I don't think that it's saying honor the Lord with, let's say your paycheck, I mean, how far removed from our inner state is something like a paycheck? It's like layers and layers and layers removed. I don't even think this is saying honor thy Lord with thy substance, meaning honor thy Lord with your body, with your physical body. Our physical body is not our substance. We are a soul, we are spiritual, that's what I believe. And so if that's the case, then our substance is something spiritual. And this is called, it's our imagination, it's our feelings, it's our thoughts, it's our sense of awareness. Honor God with that, which means put it in service to God. Really allow yourself to, even you could say, submit with that part of yourself to something greater. And that's what it means to honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. The first fruits are not physical manifestation. Physical manifestation is way down the line of causation. The first fruits are, right now. Really, it's the present moment more than anything. But if you wanted to be more specific, it's the thoughts that you're having, it's the feelings that you're having right now in this present moment. Those are the first fruits. And if you do that, so shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. So here we have the barns on one hand and the presses on the other. The barns are something that's closed off. You use them to store up a bunch of goods like grain or hay or something, right? But they're closed. They have a door. You have to open the door to get inside. That's like our mind. So the barns being filled with plenty means internally we'll be living from a state of fulfillment. We'll be feeling a sense of joy and peace and love internally. That's the barn. And then eventually they will burst out, the presses will burst out with new wine, meaning your circumstances, your outward circumstances will change. And that's it. That's basically all I will say for that. That's the first 10 verses of Proverbs Chapter 3. I hope you guys found something meaningful in it. I think it's one of the most beautiful, beautiful chapters in the Bible. I'm so happy I found it, and I'm happy I got to share it with you guys. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you again soon.